By the ancient baobab tree, Bola's hands tremble as the wind carries whispers only she can hear. Her gaze pierces the horizon, where darkness gathers, the winds howling of death and destruction. Her heart beats faster, the air around her thick with the weight of her vision. She knows what's coming, but the knowing doesn't bring comfort, only the cold grip of inevitability. Bola's vision deepens, her breath catching as she sees a storm darker than any before. She witnesses her village, Mbala, crumbling too, ruin, the skies darkened by the storm's fury, and her own body lying cold beneath the baobab tree. The vision shudders, as if trying to tear itself from her mind, but she can't escape it. Death, destruction, her own end, all entwined with the land she loves. Kofi gallops towards the baobab, his horse's hooves pounding the earth. He pulls up sharply, his breath ragged, eyes wild. "Bola!" he gasps. "The elders! They've called for you! Now!" His voice is tight with fear. The air crackles with tension as Bola stares at him, her face unreadable. She can feel the ice weight of what's to come pressing down on her chest. Kofi's eyes flicker to her, his lips parted as if to speak, but the words never come. He knows something is wrong, something beyond the storm and the elder's summons. He catches the strange glint in her eyes, the burden she carries. "What do you see, Bola?" His voice is softer now, hesitant. But she doesn't answer. Instead, she turns away, her silence louder than any words. The truce between them remains unspoken as the future waits, heavy and suffocating. The baobab tree stands tall, its roots deep in the earth, a silent witness to all that happens in the village. It is said to know the fates of all who stand beneath it. As Bola stands, its massive branches sway in the wind, as though whispering a warning, its ancient bark holding the secrets of generations. Bola places her hand on the tree, seeking guidance, but the response is chilling. It offers no comfort, only the cold certainty of what is to come. Bola enters the elders' circle, where the air is thick with suspicion and fear. The weather outside mirrors the tension inside, dark, restless. The elders sit in silence, waiting for her to speak. Bola feels their eyes on her, knowing they finally believe her visions, but that belief brings no relief. "The storm approaches," she says simply, her voice steady despite the panic clawing at her chest. "But there's something more. The village will fall." The words hang in the air, like the storm clouds above them. "You see it, don't you?" one elder murmurs, his voice trembling. Bola's heart skips. They know. They all know. The truth is undeniable. Her death is written in the winds, and the village will be swept away in the chaos. She is the key to saving Mbala, but the cost, her own life. A heavy silence falls over the gathering as the elders look to her, the weight of her knowledge pressing down like the earth itself. Kofi steps forward, his brow furrowed with concern. "Bola, we can fight this," he insists, his eyes desperate for some solution, but Bola's gaze hardens. She can see the future clearly now, and it's not one of hope. "Kofi," she whispers, her voice barely a breath, "you'll play a part, but it will not be one of salvation." His face falls, a flicker of doubt passing through his eyes. Is he part of the betrayal that looms over the village? She cannot say, but the vision is clear. His loyalty too will be tested. The wind picks up. It howls through the village, warning them of the coming storm. People begin to rush to their homes, but there's a fear in their eyes, an uncertainty that Bola knows is rooted in more than just the weather. The village has no idea what is coming. They are unprepared not just for the storm, but for the betrayal that will tear them apart. Bola can feel it now, a palpable tension in the air. Something is about to shatter and the village will never be the same. Bola stands alone, her back to the elders gathering, staring into the distance. The storm is almost upon them. She can hear the whispers of the wind, the voices of the past, the elders who have come before her. She knows what she must do. Confront the village, reveal the truth. The cost will be high. She prepares herself for what she must say, for the choices that lie ahead. Her fate is sealed, but Mbala's future, its very soul, is still in her hands. Mbala is a village caught between two worlds. Beautiful in its simplicity, its people are bound to ancient traditions, but those very traditions tie them to dangers. They cannot escape. The earth is rich, but the weather is fickle. The winds speak, and the rivers rage, both forces shaped by the old gods. Every day in Mbala is a dance between survival and destruction. Bola's gift is known to all. When she sleeps, the future comes to her. Visions that show death, chaos, and sometimes hope. The villagers fear her gift. She sees things no one should know. Her warnings are not just whispers, but screams from the future. But is it a blessing or a curse? She sees everything, yet she cannot control what is to come. Her dreams are a window into what might be, but they also bear the weight of inevitable fate. Kofi, once her closest confidant, watches her now with eyes clouded by doubt. The bond they shared feels stretched, strained by the weight of Bola's prophecies. "How can you be sure?" he asks, his voice trembling with uncertainty. He wants to trust her, but the doubts gnaw at him. The future she sees is too dark, too distant, too difficult to believe. The faith they once had in each other now feels fragile, as if it might break with one more lie. Kofi stands at the edge of the village, looking towards the gathering clouds. "Do you really think they'll listen?" His question is sharp, carrying the weight of his worry. The village, they believe in the old ways. They've always believed in the land, in the gods. They don't trust in your visions. His voice falters as he turns back to Bola. "What if you're wrong? What if they ignore you? What if it's too late?" Bola's heart races, her eyes distant as she watches the horizon. The wind howls louder now, but the village remains oblivious. "They won't listen," she mutters, her voice filled with dread. The storm is already here. They won't know until it's too late. Fear grips her chest, choking her words. The village does not believe in the storm she has seen, and it may cost them everything. But she cannot make them see what she knows to be true. Bola knows her visions are not just glimpses. They are warnings. The fate of the village lies in her hands, but the burden is too much to bear alone. If they don't listen, she trails off, the weight of her own words sinking in. The prophecy is clear. A storm is coming that will ravage the land. But it's not just nature that will destroy them. It's the choices they make. Bola is the village's last hope, but the cost of ignoring her vision could be too great. The elders gather, their faces solemn, their voices soft as they deliberate. They have lived through many storms, many trials, but none like this. They know the signs are real, but to act on them is to break with tradition. The air is thick with tension as the village's fate hangs in the balance. Bola knows they must decide soon. The time for doubt is running out, and the storm is closing. And Kofi steps forward, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "I will stand by you, no matter what happens," he says. "Even if I don't fully understand, even if I'm afraid, this is not just your burden to carry alone." But his promise rings hollow in the silence between them. His doubts still linger, and Bola knows it. She's grateful for his support, but she also knows that if the village falls, Kofi's trust may fall with it. The winds grow stronger, the air heavy with the promise of destruction. Bola feels it in her bones. The storm is real and it is coming. She can see it now, a wall of darkness marching across the land, bringing with it chaos and death. But will the village act in time, or will they wait until it's too late? The uncertainty presses on her chest as her heart beats faster, and she can only hope the elders will hear her cry for help. Bola stands at the threshold of the great hall, the storm raging outside now, as if mirroring the turmoil within her. She knows what she must do. She must confront the elders and convince them of what she has seen. But the fear tightens around her, making every step feel heavier than the last. What if they refuse? What if they deny the storm? The fate of the village rests on her words, and the weight of that responsibility is almost too much to bear. She takes a deep breath and steps forward, ready to face her destiny. The elders sat in silence, their eyes fixed on the entrance. Each wrinkle on their faces told stories of wisdom, but also of doubt. Today was no ordinary day. Today, Bola, the village's seer, was to reveal a vision. The air was thick with expectation. The mix of respect and suspicion hung between them. The villagers looked to the elders for guidance, but they knew the prophecy would bring either salvation or ruin. The tension was palpable. Some of the elders exchanged uneasy glances, their hands fidgeting with beads or staffs. A soft murmur swept through the council, but no one dared speak. Every eye was on Bola. Bola entered with a steady, deliberate step. Each movement seemed to echo in the hall. The weight of the village's future pressed on her shoulders. The elders' stares were like burning coals, each one a question waiting to be answered. Chief Akwasi sat at the head of the council, his eyes sharp, waiting for her to speak. His presence alone was enough to make anyone hesitate. Bola's breath caught in her throat as she met his gaze. The chief was known for his wisdom, but also for his suspicion of anyone who dared speak of doom. Still, she had no choice. She must speak the truth, no matter the cost. The chief's voice broke the silence, low but firm. "What do you see, Bola? The village waits for your prophecy. Speak, so we may know our fate." His words hung in the air, as sharp as a blade. There was no room for doubt or hesitation. The seer's visions were sacred, but so were the elder's authority. Chief Akwasi's piercing gaze never left her. Bola stood tall, though her hands trembled slightly. The vision that had haunted her dreams for days was clear in her mind. She had seen it, the storm, the destruction, and worse, she had seen the one who would bring it. "The storm is coming," Bola said, her voice steady but laced with fear. "A storm greater than any before. It will tear through our homes, our fields, and our spirits. It will not be stopped." The council's faces tightened in disbelief. A storm was no mere threat. It was a symbol of destruction, a harbinger of devastation. But the greatest fear was not the storm itself. Bola's voice faltered for just a moment, but she continued, the words spilling out with the weight of the truth. "There is one among us who will seek to save us, but in doing so, they will bring about our destruction." A collective gasp filled the room. The elders shifted uneasily in their seats, murmurs rising. Bola could feel the cold stares of suspicion upon her. Who was this betrayer? Who? Chief Akwasi's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Who is this traitor you speak of? Who among us seeks to bring about our downfall?" His fury was palpable, and the room crackled with tension. The elders leaned forward, eager for answers, their eyes wide with fear and anger. Bola hesitated, her gaze shifting to the faces around her. Kofi, standing near the back, felt a cold sweat trickle down his spine. His chest tightened as doubt gnawed at him. Was he the one? Could he be the one to betray them all? He tried to push the thought away, but it clung to him like a shadow. Bola's eyes lingered on Kofi for just a moment, and he caught the fleeting glance. It was enough to make his stomach turn. A heavy silence fell. The weight of the prophecy settled over them like a shroud. The elders exchanged uncertain glances, the seeds of fear now planted in their hearts. Could they trust one another? Or had betrayal already taken root? Bola's heart pounded in her chest. She knew the truth would rip the village apart, but the weight of silence might condemn them all. She could not ignore the darkness that threatened them, but revealing it might tear the village asunder. Would they believe her? Could she live with the consequences of telling the truth? The room was silent, save for the sound of breath. No one moved. No one spoke. The air was thick with realization. A storm was coming, but it was not the only danger. The prophecy had left them with more questions than answers. And as Bola stood there, the realization settled in. Perhaps the greatest danger was the one that walked among them. The storm might not be the only thing that would destroy them. The village gathered in the Hall of Elders, a place heavy with the weight of history. The elders sat in their place, their faces carved with age, but their eyes sharp and unyielding. Their hearts raced, though their bodies remained still. Today, the seer would speak. She was their guide, yet they feared her words. The power of the prophecy could bring salvation, but it could also tear everything apart. The room buzzed with an anxious energy. Each elder, from the wise to the skeptical, waited for Bola to speak. They felt the urgency in the air. A shift was coming, but what would it be? Bola entered, her head held high, though her heart pounded. The weight of the village's gaze rested upon her. Chief Akwasi's eyes bore into her. He was their leader, and his judgment was final. The others, too, observed closely, their faces a mix of expectation and doubt. She had seen the storm. She had felt the darkness. Yet the moment to speak had arrived. She could feel the power of their belief in her. Yet the fear that came with it threatened to swallow her. She breathed deeply, for this would not be a simple prophecy. This would be a reckoning. Chief Akwasi leaned forward, his voice firm and demanding. What do you see? Tell us now. The people wait for your words. There was no room for hesitation. His tone left no space for error. This was a moment of truth, the weight of the councils. Expectation pressed on her chest. They had gathered to hear her vision, but Bola could already sense the storm that lay in her revelation. The future of the village was in her hands. The storm is coming, Bola said. Her voice was steady, though her insides twisted. It will be unlike any the village has ever seen. A storm that will tear apart what we hold dear. It will ravage the land, scatter our people, and leave nothing but destruction behind. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. The elders shifted in their seats. The storm was not just a threat. It was an omen. A force of nature they could not control. Bola paused, feeling the weight of what came next. But there is more, she said, her voice trembling with the burden of her words. The one who seeks to save us will be the one to destroy us. The one who will lead us to safety will be the one to bring our ruin. A chill ran through the room. Eyes darted from one elder to the next, uncertainty flooding their hearts. Who could this betrayer be? Who among them could bring such destruction, cloaked in the guise of a savior? The room erupted. Voices rose, accusations hanging in the air. Chief Akwasi slammed his staff on the ground, silencing the murmurs with a single strike. His face twisted in fury. Who is this traitor? Who will bring this destruction upon us? His eyes swept the room, searching for a sign of guilt. The tension was unbearable. Bola remained silent, her hands shaking. She had not named the one who would betray them, but her silence felt like an accusation. The elders leaned forward, pressing for answers, but none came. Kofi's stomach churned. He had felt the weight of Bola's words, but now it was worse. Doubt crept in. Could it be him? Could he too be the one to destroy them all? His gaze shifted around the room, meeting the eyes of the elders. He could see the doubt settling in their faces, a silent question in the air. He could feel the pressure of their eyes. The uncertainty gnawed at him. Was he the one? Was his fate already sealed? A heavy silence fell once more. No one spoke. The room was thick with the weight of fear and doubt. The elders exchanged uneasy glances, their minds racing. Could someone among them truly be a traitor? Was there no one they could trust? The unity of the council, once unshakable, was now crumbling. Suspicion hung in the air like smoke. Every elder sat rigid, consumed by the realization that betrayal was inevitable. Bola stood frozen, torn between the truth and the pain it would bring. The villagers trusted her, but if she revealed too much, the pain would fracture the unity of the village. Yet to stay silent would mean ignoring the greater danger that loomed ahead. Was it better to let the truth unfold, no matter how bitter, or to spare them the agony of knowing the betrayer's identity? The burden was heavy on her heart, but she knew her silence would not keep the storm at bay. A deep, almost suffocating silence blanketed the room. The realization of what Bola had spoken sank in. Betrayal had already planted its seeds among them, and no matter how they fought, it could not be erased. The storm was coming. But the greater storm had already arrived, inside their hearts. The village could no longer be saved by mere words. They were already on the brink, and the question now was whether they could survive what was to come. The winds howled as the sky darkened, a violent force that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the earth. In the blink of an eye, the storm struck, fierce and untamed. The villagers scrambled, shouting for their loved ones, rushing toward the nearest shelter. The ground trembled, and the trees bent beneath the weight of the wind. No one had seen it coming. The peaceful village of Mbala, once calm and proud, was now a place of chaos. Panic spread like fire, and in the midst of the confusion, an even darker storm began to form. It wasn't just the winds that threatened to destroy them. It was something worse. Through the howling wind and dust, a new force appeared on the horizon, warriors from a neighboring tribe. The village had always regarded them with suspicion, but now they marched into Mbala, led by none other than Kofi. His face, once full of camaraderie, now twisted with the cold mask of ambition. He ushered them in under the guise of protection, claiming that the village needed help to survive the storm. But his eyes gleamed with something else, something darker. As the villagers began to whisper, the truth began to surface. Kofi had aligned himself with their enemies. The land they had fought so hard to protect was slipping through their fingers. Bola watched in disbelief. The wind roared in her ears, but the sight of Kofi standing at the head of the enemy tribe cut through the storm. Her heart sank. He was her closest confidant, the one she had trusted above all others. They had fought together, struggled together, shared secrets and dreams. Now he was standing there with a sword in his hand, leading the enemies to their gates. The realization hit her like a wave. Kofi, the man she had relied on, had turned on them. It was a betrayal deeper than the storm itself. Without warning, Kofi raised his sword, a gleam of cold determination in his eyes. The villagers who dared to stand in his way were met with the sharp edge of his blade. His former friends, his former allies, were now enemies to be crushed. His ambition was clear. No longer the trusted man of the village, he had become the merciless leader of their downfall. As the storm raged on, the true battle began, not just for survival but for the soul of Mbala. Kofi's sword swept through the crowd, each strike a step closer to the end. Bola, heartbroken and furious, pushed through the chaos. She fought against the fear and the rain, her eyes locked onto Kofi. She couldn't believe it, but there he was, a man she once called a brother, standing against everything they had fought for. "You did this to us," she shouted, her voice rising above the storm. "You brought this destruction here, not the wind. You sold us out for power." Her voice cracked as the reality set in. Kofi didn't flinch. He only stood taller, his grip tightening on his sword. Kofi's eyes flickered, guilt hidden beneath his steely exterior. "I had no choice," he replied, his voice hard but shaky. "The tribe promised me power, safety. They gave me what you never could. What was I supposed to do? Watch this village crumble while I stood by and did nothing? They offered me a future. I took it." His words spilled out like poison, each one carrying the weight of his decision. He wasn't just defending his actions, he was justifying them. The storm raged around them, but inside, the betrayal was worse than any weather. Bola's chest tightened as she faced Kofi. "You didn't care about us," she whispered, her voice raw with the truth. "You never cared. This was never about survival. You wanted power. You wanted to sit on the throne while we fought to hold on to the land that was ours." Her eyes burned with unshed tears. The storm outside seemed nothing compared to the storm within her. The pain of his betrayal cut deeper than any sword. He had sold his soul, and worse, he had sold them all. The truth hung heavy in the air, and Kofi could no longer hide behind his lies. His actions had sealed their fate. The land, the people, the village, they were all lost to him now. The storm outside mirrored the chaos in his heart. His greed had brought this destruction. The very thing that was supposed to save them had become their undoing. Mbala would never be the same. The village was broken, and its fate was sealed by one man's ambition. In the midst of the storm, the villagers found their courage. Despite the odds, despite the treachery that had torn them apart, they rallied. Men and women who had once stood by Kofi now stood together against him. They fought not just for survival, but for the honor of Mbala, for the legacy of their ancestors. The air crackled with energy, and the village rose from the ashes of betrayal. The storm may have broken their homes, but it would not break their spirit. Despite the villagers' courage, the battle was lost. Kofi's alliance had sealed their fate. Mbala, the land of their ancestors, was no longer theirs. The enemy tribe swept through, claiming the land, the homes, and the hearts of the people. Kofi, once one of them, was now their conqueror. As the storm finally began to fade, the villagers stood in the ruin of their homes, their land lost, their spirits broken. The price of betrayal had been steep, and there would be no turning back. The winds had blown, and Mbala had fallen. The wind had finally calmed, but the devastation was left in its wake. The village of Mbala lay broken, its once vibrant huts, now nothing more than twisted wood and shattered thatch. The crops, which had been the lifeblood of the community, were destroyed. Everywhere one looked, there was destruction. Homes flattened, paths erased, the earth scarred by the fury of the storm. The villagers, exhausted and stunned, wandered through the wreckage. Their hearts ached, but there was no time for mourning yet. The land was lost, but it was not yet the end. The villagers moved slowly, their faces hardened, aware that the storm's impact was far deeper than just the physical damage. Their spirits, too, had been shaken. Kofi walked at the front of the group, his head low, his face void of pride. Once he had stood as the village's protector, its strong arm against any threat. Now he was a broken man, his once gleaming eyes filled with regret. The villagers surrounded him, their steps firm and purposeful. No one spoke as they marched him toward the clearing, where they would cast him out. His betrayal had cost them everything. The people who once looked to him for leadership now looked away, their trust shattered. His hands were bound, his sword taken from him, and with every step, his fall from grace became undeniable. He had chosen power over his people, and now he would pay the price. From a distance, Bola watched. She stood alone, her heart heavy with a sorrow that threatened to consume her. Kofi, the man she had once trusted above all others, now stood condemned. Her chest tightened as the realization gnawed at her. He had led them to this. The village was lost, their spirits broken. She had once stood beside Kofi, fighting for the land, the people. Now all that was left was a hollow silence between them. His betrayal had not only destroyed Mbala, it had destroyed her belief in the very bonds that held the village together. With every step he took away from her trust, once as strong as the earth beneath their feet, crumbled to dust. Chief Akwasi stood before the villagers, his voice steady, yet laced with sorrow. "The storm has taken much from us, but it cannot take our spirit," he declared. His eyes swept over the broken village, his people, his family. He could see the weariness in their eyes, the grief in their hearts. But he also saw their resilience. "We will rebuild," he continued. "Mbala will rise again. We have the strength, we have the hands, and we have the heart." The villagers listened in silence, some nodding, others simply staring into the distance. Chief Akwasi knew that words alone wouldn't restore what had been lost, but they were a start, a rallying cry to remind them of who they were and who they still could be. As Chief Akwasi's words echoed through the village, there was an unspoken truth hanging in the air. Rebuilding the homes would be the easy part. The emotional wounds, the betrayal, would not heal so quickly. "We will rebuild," Akwasi said, but his voice carried the weight of something deeper. "But we will never forget." The villagers' eyes met one another, and in that moment the full weight of their loss settled in. The homes could be rebuilt, the crops replanted, but what of their trust? What of the unity that once bound them together? The pain of Kofi's betrayal would linger long after the land was restored. Bola, still standing at the edge of the village, understood that the true loss was not just the land or the homes. It was the soul of Mbala that had been ripped away. The storm may have broken their village, but it was Kofi's treachery that had shattered their spirit. The unity they once had, like the roots of an ancient tree, was gone, leaving only scattered fragments behind. The ties that had bound them as one were severed, and no amount of rebuilding could restore the sense of togetherness they had lost. Mbala would rise from the rubble, but it would never be the same. Kofi stood at the center of the clearing, his shoulders slumped under the weight of the villagers' gaze. No one spoke as they encircled him. They had trusted him, fought beside him, and loved him. Now they would see him for what he was, a traitor. The leader who had once stood tall among them was now nothing more than a fallen man. There would be no redemption for him. The villagers turned their backs one by one, their silence louder than any condemnation. Kofi had betrayed them all, and now they would ensure he would never return to power. His future was sealed, and no apology could undo the damage he had caused. Though the land was ruined and their hearts heavy, the villagers slowly began to turn their attention toward the future. They started clearing away the debris, digging foundations for new homes and planting what little crops they had left. It was hard, exhausting work, but it was necessary. The village, though broken, still had the will to survive. As they worked, a new determination filled the air. They would rebuild, not just for the land, but for the memory of what Mbala had been. And as they labored, the sun began to peek through the clouds, casting a faint light on the village that would rise again. Even as the physical work of rebuilding continued, the scars of Kofi's betrayal remained. No amount of effort could erase the wounds he had left behind. The land might heal, but the hearts of the villagers were forever marked. They would rebuild their homes, their village, but they would never again be the same. The shadow of betrayal would follow them always, a reminder that trust once broken cannot easily be restored. Mbala would never again be what it once was. The village had changed forever. Bola stood at the edge of the village, watching the workers rebuild. Her heart still ached, but her resolve was clear. She had lost much, her trust, her faith, her sense of community, but she would not let that define her. Mbala would move forward, and she would lead them. Though the village was forever scarred, she would be there to guide them toward healing. "We will move forward," she whispered to herself. The journey ahead would be long and difficult, but she would walk it with strength. The village, though broken, had a chance to start anew if they had the courage to face the future without Kofi. Bola stood at the edge of the village, her eyes fixed on the remnants of what had once been a thriving community. She had known the storm was coming, the destruction it would bring, but knowing the future had not prepared her for the weight it would place on her heart. Her gift, once seen as a blessing, now felt like a curse. The villagers had relied on her visions to guide them, but the cost of that knowledge was heavier than she could bear. The storm had not been the only threat. It was her own warnings, her own attempts to alter fate that had led them here. The future, it seemed, was not just something to see. It was something that could break you. The storm, devastating as it was, had only been a symptom of a deeper sickness. The real cause of the village's fall lay in the fear and betrayal that had festered within. People had made choices, driven by fear of the unknown, by distrust, that had shattered the bonds that held the village together. Bola saw this truth clearly now. The destruction of their homes was not the storm's fault alone. It was the result of their inability to unite, to see past their own doubts. Fear had crept into their hearts long before the winds arrived. The storm had simply been the tipping point, but the cracks had already begun to form in the soul of Mbala. Bola thought of Kofi. He had been the trusted protector of the village, the one everyone had looked to for guidance. But in the end, even he had succumbed to the temptation of power, choosing personal gain over the good of the community. His betrayal had not just caused harm, it had shattered the very foundation of trust that held Mbala together. Bola had known Kofi for years. She had seen him as a pillar of strength. But in the end, his fall proved a painful truth. No one was beyond temptation. Even the most trustworthy could be led astray, and the consequences of that fall were far-reaching. Bitsi, the baobab tree. Bola stood alone, her hands resting lightly on the gnarled bark. The tree had always been a symbol of wisdom and reflection for the people of Mbala. In its shade, they had gathered for many important decisions, seeking counsel from the earth itself. Now, standing there, Bola felt the weight of her own choices and visions. The future had shown itself to her, but it had also warned her of the dangers of meddling with it. The baobab seemed to whisper, its branches swaying as if to remind her that the past could not be changed, but the future could still be shaped. She closed her eyes, listening to the wind rustling through the leaves. The answers she sought were not out there, they were within her. Bola's dreams had always come to her as vivid warnings, images of things yet to come. But now, she saw them differently. They were not just warnings, they were lessons. Each vision carried a deeper message about the choices people made, the paths they walked, and the consequences of their actions. She had once thought her gift was a blessing, a way to help her people. But now she saw that it was not enough to know the future. What mattered was how one acted in the present. Her dreams had not just shown her what could be. They had taught her the wisdom of understanding the power of choice. As she reflected on the village's fall, Bola realized the greatest lesson the future had shown her. It was not power or strength that determined the fate of Mbala. It was unity. In times of crisis, when the winds of destruction came, it was the strength of the people's bonds that mattered. Divisions had torn them apart, and their individual fears had scattered them like the pieces of the wreckage. The storm had tested them, but it was their failure to stand together that had caused the real damage. Unity, Bola understood, was the true strength of a village. Without it, even the strongest leader could fall. The destruction of Mbala was not just the loss of homes or crops, it was the loss of their sense of community. But Bola knew the village could be reborn. The lessons of the past, painful as they were, held the key to their future. They had to rebuild not just their homes, but their trust in one another. The divisions that had torn them apart had to be healed. And if they could find the courage to learn from their mistakes, Mbala could rise again. But this time, it would be built on a foundation of unity, not fear. Bola had seen the future many times, but now she understood something important. Fate was not set in stone. It was shaped by the choices people made in times of crisis. Her visions had shown her possibilities, but it was the actions of the people that truly determined the outcome. The future was not a fixed path. It was a river that could be redirected by the strength of their choices. Bola now saw her gift not as a way to see what was coming, but as a guide to understanding that the power to change the course of their fate had always been within them. Bola stood in the quiet of the night, the weight of her wisdom settling in her bones. She had seen the village's fall, and she had seen what must be done to ensure it did not happen again. With a heavy heart, she silently vowed to guide her people, not with power or control, but with the wisdom of unity. She would be the voice that reminded them of the importance of trust, of standing together. And when the storms came again, whether literal or metaphorical, she would be there, showing them the way. The weight of her knowledge was heavy, but it was a burden she would carry willingly. The storm had passed, and the village of Mbala was still standing, though scarred. The work of rebuilding had begun, but the true task lay ahead. It was not enough to repair the homes or the fields. The heart of the village needed healing. Bola moved through the village, speaking to the people, urging them to look not just to the past, but to the future. The road ahead would be long, but Mbala would rise again, stronger, united. The bonds of trust, though broken, could be repaired. And with each step, the village moved closer to healing, their spirits determined to rebuild not just their homes, but their community. A new beginning was on the horizon, and it was one shaped by the lessons of the past.